I'm only taking one step at a time towards healing myself. I had to get out, I found a way out. No more living in pain or misery. It's all about protecting my energy. Keep the negative away from me, because I am just keeping my peace. Cut off everything that no longer was serving me, and I chose to start loving myself. I walk in my purpose, no looking back, I'm only going within. Be.O. standing there, a better version of me. I must say that I'm proud of me. It's not about how you feel, I'm living proof that God is real. So let me show you how to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, cause I came a long way. My journey isn't yet complete, that's what it look like to heal. Damn it, I'm wearing it well, I'm proud of myself. It's nothing to it, you can do it, all you gotta do is just fight through it. Creative soul, creative soul, creative soul. Just fight through it. Creative soul, creative soul, creative soul, creative soul, yeah, yeah.
Welcome to Pain to Purpose podcast, where we have open discussions to heal together as a community. Today, we're on episode 67, and our special guest is Miss Rose Hargrove, and we are talking about healing from dysfunctional households on today. So please welcome Rose. How are you?
I'm well. Thank you for having me.
You are welcome. I am excited to have you. I'm glad that you reached out to be on the podcast. I definitely believe that your story will help a lot of people. We talk a lot about dysfunctional families and breaking habits that we grew up on over here, breaking those generational curses, and changing our mindset so that we can heal. So thank you for reaching out.
Yes, thank you.
So can you tell us a little bit about yourself?
So, well, currently I'm in my, I don't want to say second marriage, the final chapter with my husband. We've been together 7 years, married for 5, and we each have 3 children. So the Brady Bunch, we have 6. None together, though. I tried. I tried. He was like, "Lady, I don't know." We're older now. So we met when we were in our late 30s, and now we're in our 40s. So I tried. And right now I'm a family coach. I am training to be travel advisor. I know that's kind of like my side hustle that I've always wanted to do. And now that my kids are older, I feel like I want to do that a little bit.
Mhm.
But yeah, so that I'm working on writing. I write a lot. I'm working on my book. It's not just a story of my life, but all the lessons that I've learned through all the things that I've been through.
Yeah.
So that's where I'm at now. I'm always learning. I'm actually in seminary school too, because just learning that faith aspect. I'm not doing it for anything other than to just learn like the basic history and stuff. Maybe God will have a different direction for me in the future, but for now I'm just like taking in, and I'm just like, why weren't we taught all this stuff? I just find it fascinating right now.
So as I was reading your email, you were very open and you shared a lot of your upbringing. So I really want to get into that and give you the space to open up for our audience to explain to them how your upbringing was and how you maneuver to your healing process.
So when you're little, you think everybody's got the same family dynamic. So obviously you're not aware of anything that's like chaotic. But looking back, it was crazy. My we lived in New Jersey. Now we're in North Carolina. But my father was a drug dealer. We had people in and out of the house, and my mom was a nurse, and she worked third shift. So he would have women in and out of the house too at night while she was gone. In the midst of all the people in the house, so there was 4 of us, and I was the oldest of 4. So I was molested in that time, but not knowing what it was, because I wasn't taught any of that stuff. Mm-hmm. But I was just told to keep quiet. So I thought that I was doing something bad. And then, so it was my mother, my father, and then we had not his biological mom, but the woman who had raised him since he was 6 months old living with us. And I remember it was always fighting, always toxic. My father was always being very abusive to my mom. I remember him throwing knives at her, just all the crazy things. I remember one day she was going to leave him, and I'm packing all the clothes in a big black trash bag. And I was only like maybe 6 or 7. And I was like, I'm going with my mom, and I'm packing all my clothes up. And he was like, you're not taking these kids anywhere. And my aunt had told me a lot of things later in life, but at that time she was trying to leave. He just wouldn't let her take all of us. So that's why she had stayed, because flash forward to he ended up killing her and hiding her body and moving us from New Jersey to North Carolina and signing custody over to his father, which was my grandfather, to keep all 4 of us. And then he turned himself into the FBI, because at that time they were looking for my mom, but they couldn't find her body.
So how long after he unalived her did it take for them to find out that she had been killed?
So, and it's so weird, because we didn't find out a lot of stuff until we were older, because it was so taboo when we were little to talk about this stuff. Plus we didn't understand. Mm-hmm. So it happened like October 3rd of 1989. Mm-hmm. We didn't know that our mom was even passed away until like April, like the following year. Like they didn't tell us. They just said, oh, she's at work, she's going to move down with us later. So my aunt, her sister was the first one who reported her missing like 2 weeks after. But we were already, he moved us pretty quick down here. And we moved to North Carolina right after Hurricane Hugo had hit in like September. So it was still kind of messy and stuff here. Mm-hmm. But I remember doing Halloween here with my dad. And then they took him to the FBI, I guess wherever I don't know if it was the jail in Charlotte or wherever it was, but we got to go see him and say goodbye. And at that time, we're still not really understanding what's going on. Mm-hmm. And that's another thing, was I was always used to police at the house too. There was always people like watching our house and stuff, because they had been after my father for a long time. And there's like
drugs and stuff.
Yeah. So, like going back and finding like all these police reports and stuff. And like a few years ago, 2 of my younger siblings actually went to New Jersey and went to one of the county jails, and they let them read our parents' files, which were pretty thick. So they were after him for a lot of stuff in other states and stuff too. And it's so crazy, because I always wanted to believe like my dad didn't do all of these things and he had a reason for everything. And I remember finally when he was in prison, so like October, I guess probably by the end of October, beginning of November, the FBI had taken him back to New Jersey. And we always talked to him on the phone. Like he always called us. And he kept saying how he was going to get out and get all 4 of us. And then finally, like that April, when they told us about our mom, they said that it was an accident, that he had killed her, that he was just cleaning his gun and she walked by and it killed her instantly. And so I believed him as a kid, because I was like, so I was terrified of my father too. But I remember I have more memories with him than I do with my mom. Like he was a good dad. He always did stuff with us. We lived right back on the Delaware River, so we were always boat riding and stuff. But when it came to discipline and other things and seeing how he treated her, it was very scary. But he always said that it was an accident. He was coming out of prison and he was going to get the 4 of us, because I did not like the living situation that we were in. And I told him I want out of here. So my whole life, I grew up believing that it really was an accident. And I understood that he hid her body. So because he already knew he had been in trouble and been watched for a long time, that if, he had called 911, this is what I told myself, to like trying to explain, if he had called 911, they would have took all 4 of us, put us in foster care. She was already passed. He hid her body. He took the 4 of us down to New Jersey, made sure we were safe before turning himself in. And that's a story that I had told myself my whole life, until my siblings read those police files. And when inmates have conversations or they write letters, they keep copies of them. And my father was telling women from prison that he was going to kill my mother. Like he had been saying that, because he was always in and out of jail too when we were younger. So that's what they had, I guess, found in his file from years prior, before he actually did it.
You were how old when it actually happened?
So my birthday's in November. So it happened October of 89. So I was 7 and I turned 8 a month later.
And then when you found out the truth, you were how old?
8. So it was like, that was October. And then we found out like that following spring in April. Yeah. Yeah. And then his trial took a while. I think his trial was supposed to happen sometime in 1991. And literally the day before his trial, well, I think a couple months prior to this, he had tried to commit suicide in prison, which I've heard Camden County prison in New Jersey is pretty rough. But he had thrown himself from like the 2nd-story balcony inside the prison. But like that first impact, he like tried to brace his fall. So he broke his wrists and his arms. That's what we were told. And then he was supposed to be on suicide watch. But somehow he ended up doing it again. And then that time he landed on his head, and then he was basically a vegetable. So they pulled the plug. And that was like the day before his actual like trial date, after those couple of years. But there's just so many stories like floating around, because then people said that, oh, we heard he was a serial killer. There were other bodies. And then it's so random to ever meet anybody in North Carolina that knows anything about Palmyra, New Jersey, or like anywhere near Philly, or where we grew up, where my dad was. And I ended up running into somebody who was my client, and somehow we got to talking, and he was like, oh, wait a minute. Did they used to call your dad Tiny? And that was nuts that he even knew that, because my dad was the youngest of 4. But he was not tiny. He was like 6'4". He was a big dude, but they called him Tiny because he was the youngest of 4, but he just grew up really big. And he was telling me, he was like, yeah, your dad was like XYZ for this mafia family. And that was so crazy. And so I was talking to my brother and my uncle, my dad's other brother, and they were like, yeah, he was. So it's just so weird, all of this stuff that we, found out afterwards. And my uncle has like this whole theory that he thinks that the mafia people murdered him in prison because he was gonna, I guess, turn on them and turn them in so he can get out of prison or something, and they pushed him over. So it's just like all these weird theories that we can never get answers for because it was so long ago. But so I never told anybody what was happening to me in the midst of all that. My mom, because of some things I was doing with Barbie, my mom thought something was happening, but the way that she came to me was she was yelling at me like, where did you learn to do that? Like, but she's like, if you don't tell me, I'm going to tell your dad when you get home. So she made me think that I was still doing something wrong. And put that fear in me like I was bad. So I had lied and said I saw it somewhere or whatever. But once we were taken like out of that situation and my grandfather had us, I had no reason to tell anybody because it wasn't happening anymore. And it's so weird as a child because it wasn't until I was older when you look at a little kid and you're like, how can a 6 or 7-year-old be responsible for what an adult was doing to them and think that they would get in trouble, but like as parents, they don't realize how much they project their fear onto the kid and actually scare the child and not creating like a safe environment for their child to come to them about stuff.
So this was happening from your father?
I was by somebody coming in and out of the house.
Okay.
Yeah. But yeah, so my parents knew nothing about it.
Wow.
It was somebody else that was doing that.
And at what age did you say something?
I don't think I told anybody until like high school. I think I told a friend in high school because my grandfather, once he got a hold of us, because he knew some of the dysfunction and all. So plus my parents' stuff, there was a lot of news media around the whole situation. So there were people coming from New Jersey to North Carolina trying to follow the story, follow where the kids were and all that kind of stuff. So my grandfather kept us very sheltered. So in saying that, like growing up and not ever telling anybody what happened, and then going to high school, and he wouldn't let us take sex ed or anything like that, which was super embarrassing when you're the only kid being pulled out because you're not allowed. So I'm still not understanding stuff until somebody said something to me, like in high school, just like, you know how boys are, like when they just go through like normal stuff and they think it's funny. And I didn't understand the terminology. I didn't understand anything. And I remember talking to a friend in high school, because you don't want people to know that you don't understand or know what they're saying. So you just kind of think of ways that, okay, if I say this or I respond this way, how do I not look dumb? And so I told her, and she was explaining stuff to me, and I was just so like, oh gosh, that's like, why do people say that or talk like that? Like I was really offended and embarrassed, but anyway, I remember growing up and being so resentful and so angry at my mom for staying. And I was like, I'm never going to be in that situation. I'm never going to let a man treat me like this. Like I would take my kids and leave. And that was another thing, was my grandfather, like we didn't associate with anybody else. Like my mom's parents, like we would see them every once in a while or whatever, but the whole dynamic was so weird because my mom's dad already had, I guess, issues with the other sisters. And my grandmother actually was already in early stages of Alzheimer's. And when she heard about my mom's death, it just triggered her. And it was just sad. So I just remember hearing stories about my mom's sisters. And I just was like, when I do this, I don't understand why she never left. But I remember my aunt coming and telling me one time that my mom did try to leave, but she was terrified of my dad and he wouldn't let her take us. Let her take us. So that's why she stayed. So and then it was so weird because my grandfather was so sheltered and I had a lot of issues. I can look back and know that I had, but at that time didn't know. I just knew I wanted to get away. I wanted to get away out of that household because when I said that, the woman who raised my grandfather lived with us. Well, when he brought the four of us to New Jersey, she came with us. So we went into the household with my grandfather, who was already with somebody else. And so I grew up with two grandmothers and him, and it was just so strange. But to me, I thought everybody's parents died and they lived with their grandparents. It was just so weird how my perspective was as a kid too. So I shared a room with the grandmother who was with us in New Jersey, and my other grandmother, she had a room, and my grandfather slept on the couch, and he really wasn't with either of them. And it was just weird. And it was just the three of them raising us. But the women, like the grandmothers, the step grandmothers, they would fight. And I'd always be thrown in the middle. And I was the one made to do everything because they weren't physically able to. So like at 8 years old, I'm cooking and cleaning and doing all the things. So out of high school, I was allowed to play sports. I wasn't allowed to go to friends' houses. I wasn't allowed to go to prom. I wasn't allowed to drive. So like I'm trying to go to school and figure out who I am. and not be embarrassed and try to make friends. And it was really weird. So it was weird too, because the one passed away right after I graduated high school, and then the other one passed away a year later.
The other
And I
girl.
went away. My going to the Army was my, right out of high school was my out. But when the first grandmother died, I stayed a little bit longer, and I put off signing my papers to help him with my other siblings.
Mm-hmm.
But in the meantime of that, I end up meeting, there was a girl that was a couple years younger than me that lived up the street. So her and her friend, and my grandfather really liked her. And that was the only house I would want to go to. And I just went because it was just getting out of the house.
Mm-hmm.
Well, one of the girl's cousins was who I met. So that's, and he's very handsome. And I mean, he just liked me immediately, but I didn't know then what to look for in somebody, right? To me, I was just somebody sheltered who never had anybody pay them any kind of attention like that. And I was just like, loved and paid attention to really for, I felt like the first time. And immediately I ended up getting pregnant. And so my grandfather was upset. I was the first girl that he raised, and he just kicked me out. And so I was on my own, pregnant with somebody I never should have been with. But now I'm in a situation where, okay, I'm moving forward. And he grew up very dysfunctional. And I said, well, this is what I grew up with. And I thought that we had made this pact that we were going to raise our baby in a safer way. But neither one of us had anything. You know, I actually enrolled in college and was trying to start that route. But neither of us, my grandfather took my car, like we had nothing. So just flash forward, like all the things, I ended up having 3 kids with him by the time I was 25 years old.
Wow.
And before I know it, he's abusive to me. He's cheating on me, and he's doing all of the things. And I find myself in a very similar situation of what my mother was in. But the crazy thing with him was I would try to leave, but he would keep harassing me, and he would find me. I even went so far as to like go hide in a shelter for 6 months. And I got my own place, and I had a restraining order on him and everything. And he knew I was somewhere and followed me home one day unbeknownst to me. And he just like kept coming, and he didn't care about the restraining orders or anything. So I kind of felt myself in a trap too, where I wanted to protect my kids, but I didn't want anyone to know what I was going through either. So it was just very embarrassing. Man, it's a lot to that story. He was very good looking, and I still had a lot of emotional stuff, and then having kids way too young and wanting to be a good mom to them, I didn't take care of myself. So when people saw the two of us, I guess to some people it didn't make sense. And he was friends with like some police officers and just doing different stuff, and everybody liked him. Nobody wanted to believe he was this person who he was inside the house with me. Even people at the church that we were going to. There's so many other little details to that, but I'll just try to keep it short. So when he would break into my house and I would call the police, they would laugh at me.
Really?
Yes. So I was working 4 jobs, and this one particular day, I came home to take a shower. And see, the thing is that I couldn't figure out how he was breaking into my house. And I look up, and he's like standing there. And so when you've got a restraining order on somebody, and you've got all your doors locked to the point where like the front door, the back door, and the door to the garage all have chain locks on them. No way he can get into the windows or anything. And then you look up, and somebody you're terrified of is standing right there.
Wow.
So I'm trying to get out of the shower, trying to get dressed. No, he's got a ulterior motive. I'm trying to fight him off. We end up on the floor. I had a box fan there. He unplugs the fan. He wraps it around my neck, and he just it was, and I just, at that point, I was just so tired of it. I couldn't fight him off. So I just relaxed like my whole body, and I was just like, I'm done. I can't do this. And there's a lot before that. But then he was like, oh, that's not what I want to do. Anyway, so he runs out and I call the police. When the police come to my house, I've got the marks on my neck. My lip is busted and I have a black eye. And they say to me, oh, your husband tried to rape you. Well, you're bigger than him. You couldn't fight him off. So to me, going from being very sheltered to going to wanting to do, and then I can't go to anybody for help. Like my siblings had their own families at that point, their own lives. My grandfather, that's a whole other story. I was by myself. And so like just trying to, protect my kids and not want anybody to know what I'm going through because it's so embarrassing. And then to have the police talk to you like that is even more humiliating. But I could not figure out how he kept breaking into my house. And he would keep showing up at the back door. Man, I have so many crazy stories of that. Like one time my neighbors across the street were partying and I never partied. I'd never been drunk in my whole life. And I'm in my late 20s. I've never been to a club, never anything. I don't know how to hang around people. I don't know how to really associate with people. So I just kind of like say to myself, and I'm asleep and I hear this pounding at my door at like 1 o'clock in the morning. And I'm thinking it's them drunk wanting me to come over. Well, no, my house is surrounded by cops. So I look out and so it was just so weird. And my neighbors, they were still up partying. So immediately, like, they're like, are you okay? Like, what's going on? Like, well, they told me that they had found this Jeep parked on the side of the road, ran it. It was my, at the time, husband's, his name came up and it pulled up the restraining order that I had on him. And they're like, well, we see his Jeep is there and you're just a few feet away. So we just want to come check on you and make sure you're okay. And I was like, yeah, sure. Come in. Just don't wake up my kids or anything. And now I said I had chains on all my doors, right? So when the police come in and they're looking everywhere and this one cop, and I mean, I can't even tell you how many cops were in my house. This one cop takes the chain off the garage door, opens the door, and this smoke just comes out of the garage. And he looks at me with this disgust look on his face. And then he looks into the garage and he calls my then husband's name. He said, come out of there. And it was dark. And I look at him and I'm like, man, this dude's crazy. And he walks out of the garage.
Wow.
And I'm standing there in my pajamas, like horrified. And my ex-husband, like, he looks at me and he was like, oh, she let me in and put me in here and locked the chain. And I'm like, I know that this looks crazy, but that's not what happened. I can't explain that to you. I know that it looks crazy, but I am telling you, I did not put him in there. That's all that they needed. They didn't believe me. They told me, you file a restraining order, but if you, keep being around him and then you want to call the cops, like, you're going to be arrested too. Well, first of all, I didn't call you. You found him, but I'm telling you, this is not what happened. So
how did you figure out how he was getting in?
I could not figure it out. So at that point, he still wouldn't leave me alone. I couldn't get away from him. And so he's like begging to try again. He's going to the preacher at the church who we did marriage counseling with and all the things. And I went to my grandfather and I said, I'm just going to work it out with him. At this point, I'm just exhausted and I just don't know what else to do. It's just too much chaos. And I just couldn't explain it. Like, I just kind of felt sorry for him at some point, but at the same time, it's like in the middle of that, I'm not realizing how crazy he is. Yes, he's a pain. I don't want to be with him. He keeps cheating on me and then he'll get abusive. Maybe he'll grow up. Like, I didn't realize to the extent of how crazy people could be. And he was beyond that capacity. I was just tired of fighting it. It was just easier to deal with him than trying to fight him. Like, he was calling my job constantly. And so I was like, I'll figure it out later if I can just control this situation. Plus, he threatened to file, and I didn't know anything about court and filing custody for kids either. And he threatened to try to take the kids from me, and I did not want my kids around his family at all. So that was like, oh no, you're not taking mine. So that was my way to kind of control the situation, keep my kids close, keep my eye on him. And we were only together like 9 months. And I just couldn't, like, it was just getting too bad. And I just said, God, I can't do this anymore. And some stuff happened. And I won't go into that like part of the story, but I knew then I was going to have to fight. I was going to have to fight against the police. I was going to have to fight against everybody. And I was afraid that he was either I wasn't going to let him unalive me. It would kind of be one of those scenarios where this is how this is going to have to end. And he was threatening me. He said, I'm going to kill you and make you an unsolved mystery like your mother. I mean, even his mother was threatening to come and unalive me and take my children. I had to go to the magistrate's office and file charges on her, and she was 2 hours away. But she was telling me,
it's so crazy how people know what their family members are doing and they turn their head for whatever reason.
Yes. So I knew I was going to have to fight. This long scenario, this specific day, I left him at a gas station, and it was so ironic because one of the people that I've known since 7th grade was actually a sheriff, and he was at that gas station at that day. And he kind of knew some of our history. And I just looked at him and I was like, help me. Like, I have to get away from him. And he was like, what did you do to her? And so, he's like, oh, I didn't do anything to her. And I was like, I need to get away. And so, anyway, I spent all the next day at the courthouse filing another restraining order, and I'm just like begging and pleading, like and I kept trying to tell people he is going to kill me. On top of all of this drama, his twin brother had murdered somebody when he was 17 and in prison. He just got out a few years ago, and we're in our 40s now. So I'm trying to tell people, like, he is crazy and this is escalating, and I know, and so then I couldn't stay at my house, right? Because I didn't know how he was getting in from the 9 months prior.
Mm-hmm.
So, and this is how God works too. So, let's see, that was when I left him at that gas station. My birthday's November 10th, and it was like November 9th. It was like the day before my birthday. I spent my whole birthday at the courthouse fighting. And I'm not staying at my house for like 2 weeks. Well, Thanksgiving comes, and it was so weird. My car blew a tire, and my uncle comes and takes me, and I said, hey, can you stop by the house with me? Because, side note, anytime that I wanted to go to the house, I had to call the police to walk there through me because I was afraid to go to the house. And of course, they give me a bunch of mess for it, right? But anyway, I asked him, and we heard all of this noise as soon as the door was open, and the kids were out in his truck or whatever, and it was at night. My uncle opens up the garage door. He was literally coming through the wall in the side of the house.
What?
Because he did construction, and the houses were so close together, you couldn't really see somebody do it. Because I'm like, how do people never see him? So he took the siding off the side of the house, and like the plywood, because the inside of the garage wasn't sheetrocked in, it was just plywood. And he moved the plywood and came in the garage. And in those houses, there was like a ladder entrance in the garage. Mm-hmm. And so he would pull that down, crawl across the attic, and come in the attic way inside the house. Wow. So he was literally coming in through the wall of my house, and then he just put everything back together. So who would have ever thought he was literally coming into the wall of the house? And so he just left so fast that day that we had caught him. He didn't put it all back. And so immediately I call 911 and I start freaking out. And I'll tell you what, the police station didn't mess with me no more after that. Then they knew at the capacity of what he was crazy, and he was arrested a couple days later, and he went to jail for a few years. He had several felony charges. Like that's like a whole other story. The day that I dropped him off at the gas station, I didn't see him till a year later when he was sentenced to prison. And knock on wood, I haven't heard from him since, and that was 2010.
So this book that you've been writing, this is all from the trauma from this.
That and like just all the parts of my life even after that, because now my kids are, I think, like 3, 4, or no, it took me 2 years to get away from him in total.
Mm-hmm.
So by this time they were, I'm trying to think. I know the older two were 7 and 8, and I just keep thinking, I think my younger one was maybe 3. So they were 3, 7, and 8, and I put my daughter in, my 7-year-old daughter in counseling. My 8-year-old didn't really show anything, and he really wasn't engaging, and he was super smart, so he was fine, so then it was like, how do I pick up the pieces now? How to become a single mom and make sure my kids don't grow up with issues that I realize now that I grew up with. Mm-hmm. And trying to protect them and give them all the things and all the opportunities in all of that. So I tried to, like, despite everything I went through, I wanted to make sure my kids grew up better. They had experiences. They felt safe,
mm-hmm.
To come to me about stuff, just all the things. And so the one thing that bothered me was working 4 jobs. I had a live-in nanny, and I didn't get to spend all this time with my kids that I was missing. I miss, being able to stay at home and be room mom and be able to do all the things. So anytime they had birthdays or anything, I went above and beyond. So then I started a nonprofit to fill in that gap for women coming from the shelter, because so many women go back and I always thought women were, I always thought of them in a negative way for going back, until God put me in that situation and showed me. And I really do believe God put in me a purpose to understand so that I could help other people. So I built this nonprofit to help them not go back for financial reasons, fear reasons, or whatever. And what's so ironic is the police who gave me the hard time supported me when I started that nonprofit. I have so many stories like that from people that were in this scenario of whatever, and now I'm sitting at the other side of them. So whether I needed somebody for services and I'm sitting at the other side of their desk, to where now we're sitting at a table together as like community leaders. And not a lot of people can make that transition, but I was so determined that I was going to break all these generational curses. And it hasn't been easy all these years later. My kids are like 18, 23, and 24. And I have done so much work trying to make sure each one of them are set up. No matter how much you control or try, things still happen. But I'm very grateful for the journey that has come through all of that. But I just, despite everything negative, I just keep going. Otherwise, it would just cripple you. Mm-hmm. I mean, if I sat down and you would run into some people who would be depressed in the bed, or they didn't feel it. Well, I didn't have an option. I had to go to work. I had kids to take care of. I didn't have a choice. I never got to sit in any of emotions because I was constantly in survival and fight mode for my kids. Mm-hmm. So then the more I did ministry, then it was just like learning new things. And then I took this, it's called the Family Reformation Project. So then I took this course and became a certified family coach. And it just makes you realize how many things that we think are normal that we grew up with that are really toxic and dysfunctional. Mm-hmm. So I'm like having to go back, and teach my kids this so that when they have their own families, they'll know what's healthy and what's not. And so like my daughter now, she's 23 and she has an amazing boyfriend. I'm so blessed, and it's such a wonderful family. And she'll say like, Mom, man, they get together every Friday. They do X, Y, Z. And and she's just realizing like not every family is like that. Mm-hmm. And realizing what she wants for herself, and just teaching them about like healthy dating, which I was teaching them that when they were younger. I remember sitting at the table. I think my youngest one was 10 at the time, and the other two were like 14 and 15. And I was like talking to them about dating and stuff because they were all talking about it. And I was like, listen, and I told my boys, if you ever like abuse anybody that you're with, like I'm going to be like right there. Like I'm always going to be your mom. I'm always going to be watching. So it's funny. And they made their little jokes and stuff. But everything I did together with my kids. I made sure that they had their outlets and they were able to play sports and they were trying to figure out who they were. And then just different things in a community, just like going to try to teach people. But that family reformation, just like that family school program, I feel like every family needs to go through that because it is so eye-opening to things that we just grew up with, especially in like the 70s, 80s, and early 90s that we think are normal, that are really toxic and dysfunctional. And I know sometimes like this day, you'll hear that people like overprotect their kids too. But you got to give them some experience and get them to think for themselves. It's kind of like when you baby talk to a child, they say that's not good because then they're going to baby talk. You need to talk normal to them, you know?
So is there a scripture or a certain song or something that you used or listened to while you were trying to heal from all this? I know you prayed, but is there other things that you tried?
Anything positive I can get my hands on. You know, the bigger social media came, I just tried to surround myself with positive people that were smarter than me. I just try to put myself in rooms, and that's like a whole other thing when you grow out of that dysfunction and you know you're meant for a purpose, and it's like that whole imposter syndrome. And you know what I mean? Like, there's a lot of growth that I've had to do over the years because it's not easy coming from one end to go to the other. And I love CeCe Winans, like any kind of like gospel or Christian music sometimes will just speak to you, just any kind of devotions. And it's so funny because along the way, I learned how to listen to God, how God spoke to me. And it would always be through a consistent message. And then I would say, oh, okay, this is what he wants me to learn at this time in my life. And it was just so crazy how I started realizing that, and that he was helping me navigate through. And I remember going through that, and then having a faith to walk through it is not easy either. Because I felt like I knew I had a calling, but I didn't know the how, right? So I was always I had to always have a plan.
Trying to figure it out.
Yeah. And he was trying to teach me just one step at a way, because I need to build this in you to get you to this next step. Because when you get to this next step, you need this part of your character built before you can handle the next. And I realize that now, but at the time I didn't. And I remember saying, I don't know. But, and I tried to fight against God in the beginning because I was so angry at him. Why did you let my marriage fail? Like, why did I have to have a story just like my mom? Why couldn't he be a great guy? And we raised these kids together and we like changed the world that way. Like, why did my story have to be like this? What did I do wrong and everything? And so I was angry at God for a while, but after I knew that I was safe from him, I just had this moment where I just had to just come to my knees, and I was like, I'm tired of fighting against you, God. Like, I give it all to you. And that was like the moment of like full surrender. And I started saying, I'm working 4 jobs, I'm tired, but if you say that you're going to, take care of the birds in the sky, why would I be any less? And I really started holding God accountable to that. My whole life started to change. And, so the verse that I have that he taught me was the difference between believing and knowing is life-changing. And I held my life to that, because when you believe something, you look around and you act suspicious. And that could be for like any scenario, whether it's faith-based, personal, professional, whatever. But when you know something, you move completely differently. And that's just when everything just started to change. And so those are a lot of the stories that I share. I mean, I was given a car, I was given a house basically for free, like all these crazy things out of the blue along the years. Even though I really had nobody, that was one of the other things. I was like, God, my family is gone from me. I have no parents. My siblings are on their own. There's other issues with that. There's other issues at that time with my grandfather before he passed. I had, no child support because he was in prison. I had nothing to do with his side of the family. So I really had nobody. And I was so angry at God for that. But he moved and he put the people in my life who needed to help me. The more I became in the community. I didn't want people who didn't know me to know any of the stuff that had happened to me, right? But along that way, when you're around people, like I joined the Rotary Club, I was part of the chamber, and just like all the things, you know, people eventually get to know you. And it was like people that I had met through there, like people who paid for my school. Anytime that I was in need of something, like stuff would just happen, and it would somehow show up. And so all those little stories are all part of the book.
So if you could tell the people out there that's going through the same thing you're going through one thing that you want them to take away from this, what would it be?
There is another side after. I know it's so scary and it's so heart-wrenching, but there is peace and purpose after. I think just having faith, or if you just let God lead you, he'll protect you. I think the biggest thing that I look at now is whatever's happening, I kind of step back at my higher self and I don't let it take my peace. Like so for instance, now, like something happened with like my son, he went to the military, and my son tried to unalive himself. And so he was in a very, very dark place, and he did some things that really embarrassed me after all the years that I've, you know, have fought to build and grow. He did some things that embarrassed me and I just had to not be, I take my emotions out of that. Like, this is his redemption story. This is his story. And I'm going to walk through it, because no matter what he's going through, like that shame and embarrassment, I don't own that anymore. And he's not going to either, because this is his redemption story. And anybody watching, you can't worry about, like, because I held on to shame and embarrassment for the longest time. And that kept my story hidden. And so when it's hidden, you can't get the help that you need. But for him, I walked through it with him. And it's not easy being an advocate and helping somebody through that. But I was determined, like, I've got this far. I can do it. I'm going to pull my son through it and not be embarrassed by what anybody else thinks, because people watching are going to see how you handle it. Yes. You know, so while I was embarrassed, like, oh, I don't want anybody that I went to school with to know my story or anything. My epiphany was, so I was young, like right out of high school when I got pregnant. And then, you know, when he was abusive, and then the way that the police treated me, and I didn't want anybody to know. I can't, sitting at 44 years old right now, look at somebody going through that and think anything bad about them. And that kind of helped ease my shame and embarrassment. And I was like, I held on that stuff for too long, stuff from when I was a child. So you got to do what I guess they call that shadow work, and just find that inner strength inside of you, that after you get through your hurdle, you're going to help other people. And that the people that have been watching you that whole time is going to be a lesson for them. Yes. Too. So I would say shame and don't hold on to shame and embarrassment. Don't hide. You know, find somebody that you trust. And then it was like, yeah, you're alone, because I know a lot of people like don't feel like anybody's gonna love them. I felt that same way too, because he would say, nobody's gonna love you. You have 3 kids, and my grandfather would tell me the same stuff.
Well, that's what abusers tell you, so that you can stay with them.
Yeah, my grandfather was just like, oh, you're never, you know, and so you feel so lonely. But the moment that you're in this space and you're in alignment with who you are, you attract what's meant for you to you. And so I dated a lot of rocks. And then I was tired, and I was like, okay, God, even after all that, even after all the things I've been through, you know, not everything is perfect. You still got some kind of, you know, issues. But it wasn't until I loved me and I had confidence in me, then I was in a relationship. And the second that I had met my husband, it was like this peace came over me. Like, if this was the only way that I can get to this person and I had to go through all of this, I would do it again, because that is how profound the peace is when you find your person, when you fight all of that stuff all that negativity that you attracted, and when you just finally clear your energy of it, I never realized how my confidence, even having a low credit score, because I was never taught about finance or building up your credit score, any of that, I never realized how all of that projected into the people that I would either date or be around. And the second that I found my strength and, built up my business and did the things, I was like, I would have never put myself in any of those scenarios. So it really does make a difference. You care about yourself and you know who you are and you do that self-love and you do the therapy, which therapy is hard. Then you look at things completely differently when you when you know what you want and you know who you are.
Right. So how can they stay in contact with you, follow you on your social medias, and where can they find the book?
So I'm still working on the book, so I'll post it on my website, which is faithisthedifference.com. And then all my social media is Rose Hargrove on YouTube, or The Difference Co. is the name of my business.
Okay. Well, we appreciate you coming on and share your story. I know that it is not easy sharing stories, especially when it's DV or it gets really deep. We come on here and we tell what we've been through so that we can help the community. So I thank you to the audience. Remember, it's only pain until you discover your purpose and start your healing journey. And I'll see you next Monday.